Let me welcome everybody and suggest that we start. Apologize for the few minutes I was late as indicated. Today's topic mainly is about reflecting on the significance of the 60 years of MK, which is tomorrow, and what it means in terms of the current conjecture and perhaps future perspectives, looking at the achievements made over 60 years, the successes and failures in that context, the various milestones of the evolution of MK, and the correlation between MK and ANC along the journey. Fortunately, Castro has pre-circulated. Thanks, Castro, for that. I think we're privy of now the content issues for us to make very informed inputs, but also further enriched, as we have already always committed or always understood that the object here is to enrich our discourse. So anything that's said here as a draft or a presentation is just to present the framework around which we can engage. So the presentation is not cast in stone. It will be enriched as part of our process towards major platforms like the all-inclusive conference of MK and the attendant milestones next year, 60th anniversary platforms in the provinces, the NGC, culminating with the elective conference of the ANC and MK. Having said that, it's a long presentation. I'm sure Castro will be able to give us a synoptic sort of view of what the slides seek to convey as a message without delving in detail in each. Just highlight per slide what it communicates so that we can have more time to engage than just listen to the presentation. I assume everybody has read it because it was in fact distributed this morning. But also had a view even before that. So with that said, Castro, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Commissar. Thanks, Commissar. Morning, Makabane. Morning, comrades.
Commander, angacabanga ukuthi ulahlekile ngesikhathi enkambeni sithi commander morning ngo-12 o'clock ebusuku. So it's an MK greeting, it's not a general greeting. Sharp.
Yeah, I'll try and see if I can get the presentation onto the screen.
I'm sure Madu can assist. Just make it a joint operation.
Yeah, it's there. Okay, I'll try not to go into details into all the slides. The presentation was actually developed based on mainly three elements. One was to look at the phases of MK's armed struggle, and then secondly was to address the successes of the armed struggle, and then thirdly looking at the post-apartheid period, the challenges that are there, and also the way forward. Without wasting any time, our commander, John Dise, said in 1983 that no people can accept slavery forever. We have reached a stage where we have taken a decision to liberate ourselves.
Sorry, Comrade Castro, are you aware that we are not able to see your presentation, right?
You are unable to see the presentation?
We are unable to see your presentation. So I think just upload it again.
Okay.
Yeah, there must be an upload function there, like an arrow facing upwards.
Yeah, I did click on that arrow. I thought it was on. Let me just check.
No, let's
Okay,
say
trade.
doesn't work. I'm sure Malik, you can help.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't have the latest he has. So unless he were to send it to me, I've got the draft.
Okay, let's give it a try.
I see if I can
We'll send it
upload
to
it now.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're on the right track. Okay, not anymore, but let's keep trying.
Okay, is it there now? Can you see it?
Yes, yeah. Now, if you can put it on slideshow,
Yeah, slideshow.
Okay.
yeah, then
All right.
Bob is your uncle.
Okay. All right. So I was on slide 2, and I was quoting our commander of Mkondo Sizwe, Commander John Dise, saying, "No people can accept slavery forever. We have reached a stage where we have taken a decision to liberate ourselves, and no force on earth can stop us from attaining that objective." This was in 1983 when he was interviewed by Isichaba. It is obvious that cadres of MK were not just mere soldiers, but were soldiers with a political mission, mainly to destroy the apartheid regime and to establish a non-racial and democratic South Africa as visualized in the Freedom Charter. Therefore, MK was a champion of the two pillars, the underground structures and the armed struggle of the National Democratic Revolution. I had a synopsis of the entire period of the armed struggle, starting from the formation of MK, as well as the fact that the apartheid government became intransigent in terms of addressing the concerns of the liberation movement, and as a fact, it actually became more repressive against whatever seemed to be supportive of the liberation movement. And the MK had to respond accordingly by expanding its capabilities and making sure that it challenged the apartheid regime in the language that it understood best in terms of the armed struggle. So ultimately, the struggle culminated in the negotiation process. And after the negotiations, MK got integrated into the South African National Defence Force and with all other armed forces. And also the challenges that were faced there, including how those challenges should be addressed, the interventions, the various interventions. I'll go through them as we go on with the presentation. So the scope that to cover here is the stages of the armed struggle, the ANCMK's revolutionary agenda, and then I'll look at the various operations, just a snapshot on the operations. I don't want to dwell into them deeply. And then reviewing the successes. One, the challenges of integration, and secondly, MK will regarding the unity and renewal of the ANC.
Don't forget to keep
In
changing
the
your
stages
slides.
of the I beg your pardon?
I was saying, don't forget to
beg your
keep
pardon?
changing your slides. We are still on your first slide in our screens, so you're not carrying us along.
I don't know, because I'm moving with the slideshow already. I'm on my slide, I think my 7th slide already.
Well,
But with us,
with
You
us,
can't see that.
you are still in your first
on
slide.
1. Because now I'm on my 7th slide already. I was trying to move as quickly as possible. So there's something probably.
Just try to use your left bar and see if you can't isolate each slide instead, just to give us a rundown of what you have. So just click on slide 2, for instance, and see what happens.
Let's see. If I click on slide 7, is it showing?
no.
Nothing.
Okay, there is that up and down sidebar. Have you actually tried that? On the side, yeah.
Up and down.
Yes. Can you just move that up and down?
Okay.
I think you're on the top one, the side.
I'm on the side already. Because,
well, the way
it
I
doesn't
see
show.
Where I see your cursor is effectively on the rule bar, but on your left hand side you've got the lineup of all your slides. So I was saying, if you can isolate one of those, maybe you would be fine. Okay.
I'm on the slide.
Yeah, it looks like Connie
Yes.
but that's fine. Let's just move on.
Yeah, I'm worried we're getting administrative. Now the issue is, can you send Umalik so that then it can be a backup? Meantime, talk to slides as we have them, so that we know which the backup, which will do what we want to do, slide by slide showing.
Yeah.
He's got the presentation, the one that he has, but although I've changed it a bit, but it's not much. There's not much changes.
And then let's use it. Where there are changes, will actually indicate them. The 97% is what we need. If there's 3% to be changed, it doesn't change the substantive issues.
No, it's not that much changed. It's just a few dotting the I's and dashing the T's.
Yeah, no,
that is all that changed.
Because you don't need the I's and the T's. Malik, can you assist?
Yes, I'm pulling it through now.
Please.
So what should I do from?
No, walk us through as we are doing. Then uzabuyisa slide oyabusoma uthi manje slide mangma. Then uzasibonisa wena, but you just summarize that slide so that there's continuity while she's doing the administrative support. You on slide 7? Talk to it.
Can you see the
And now the interesting thing is that now you have been able to change your slides.
Yeah, because I've moved out of the slideshow. I've gone back to the manual slide. I slide manually. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at least we can see what is there now.
Okay. All right. Let me continue from this. I was talking about the stages of the armed struggle. That there are various stages that our armed struggle went through. The first stage was the 1961 to 1963 stage, where the establishment of MK and on the 16th of December 1961, the sabotage campaign, then Operation Maibuye, and also the Rivonia arrests. Then 1964 to 1967 was that after the Rivonia arrests, where everybody thought that MK has been suppressed completely. Then we saw the attempts at recovery by our comrade Wilton Kwai and then the Bram Fisher team, and also the attempts by those who were in exile to get home, and as well as the establishment of the anti-apartheid movement in various countries and the UN resolutions for sanctions against South Africa. Then 1967 to 1968 was the Wanki and Spolilo campaign by the Lutuli detachment, and then also the Hani Memorandum, which ultimately led to the Morogoro Conference. The Morogoro Conference was also a watershed moment in the struggle, because that is where the strategy and tactics were developed, the creation of the Revolutionary Council. Then in 1973, we saw the worker strikes and the evolution of the Black Consciousness movement. And in 1974-75, we saw the collapse of the Portuguese colonialism, the liberation of Angola and Mozambique, which then started to assist us in opening New France, which we were struggling to get in terms of having access into the country. And then we saw the invasion of Angola in 1975, and then Angola, the MPLA government getting support from the Cubans and the Soviet Union, leading to the MPLA victory against the SADF in 1976. Then in 1976 to 1979, this was the turning point in the armed struggle with the Soweto uprising, where we saw a large number of former students leaving the country into exile and increasing the number of recruitments into MK. And we saw Mozambique and Angola providing military bases. And then also there were openings in the German Democratic Republic, Cuba, and the Soviet Union for further training. Then there was a delegation also in 1979 that went to Vietnam to study the People's War, which ultimately resulted in the development of the Green Book, and also MK developing its own training program with an emphasis on MCW, military combat work. And we saw also during that period the increase in Zanla operations from Mozambique, especially after Smith tried to install a puppet government of Abu Muzarewa. So the Zanla operations increased tremendously, as well as they started recruiting from the peasant community. Then in the 1980 to 1984 was the opening of the new Zimbabwean front following Zimbabwe's independence. And then also there was the process of developing the concept of the 4 pillars of the struggle as linked to the armed struggle, the underground, the mass mobilization, and the international interaction. And then we saw also a dramatic rise in MK operations. And in 1983, we saw the movement changing from the Revolutionary Council to establish in politico-military commands, which were emphasizing on combining or integrating military and political operations, particularly pushing for more political development of the masses and the underground structures playing their role. And we saw the establishment of the United Democratic Front during that period in 1983, the establishment of COSATU, which became the federation for the entire country, and the mass democratic movement becoming more effective in the country. The young lions flocking to the MK banner, in a way, unbanning the ANC within the country. And then we saw also MK being involved in operations and then in the Eastern Front in Angola, jointly with FAPLA against UNITA. And then there was also the Shishita period in the camps where there was this drive to get rid of spies and informers that had infiltrated the movement and MK in particular. And then there was a mutiny in 1984. And again in 1984, there was the Komati Accord, which reversed in a way the operations from the Mozambican side of the operations that were undertaken from the Mozambican side, where this accord between Mozambique and South Africa resulted in most of our comrades being moved out of Mozambique back to Tanzania and some back to Angola and Zambia. During this period also was that the intensification of Pretoria's total onslaught strategy, which was based on the General Bufre's total strategy, a French general who was responsible for countering for counterinsurgency operations in Algeria. This total strategy resulted in a number of states of emergencies being instituted in the country. The regime started instituting or introducing death squads and committing raids against our comrades in Matola, in Gaborone, in Maseru, in Swaziland, Harare, and also increasing its operations in Angola. We also saw the emergence of vigilante groups like Inkatha, in KZN, as well as in the then PWV area, and also in Guandebele. And then we also saw in the Western Cape the emergence of the Vetduke. This was a very difficult period in the struggle, especially because the enemy was trying by all means to retaliate towards the efforts that were undertaken by the liberation movement. In 1985 to 1990, the operations increased from 104 in 1985 to 249 in 1988. Then there was the Gabo Conference in 1985, stepping up the armed struggle. The international isolation of apartheid increased. Then we saw academics and business people moving into Zambia and other African countries to negotiate with the ANC to try and find an alternative to the apartheid regime, and we saw operations in Como, which increased MK infiltration, whereby MK cadres were increased, were infiltrated into the country in large numbers to educate the masses, particularly establish small units of revolutionary armed people. I will get into that when I go into the aspect of People's War. And then also the Operation Vula started in 1988 to prepare for, in case negotiations did not succeed, then they will be able to reignite the armed struggle. And then there was the Battle of Cuito-Cuana Valley in 1987 to 88, which was a historic turning point for the entire Southern African region, actually for the continent, whereby the apartheid forces, SADF, was defeated, and it resulted in the liberation of Namibia. And also, what I wanted to highlight here was the involvement of Umkhonto weSizwe in the Northern Front, where it played a very important role in terms of repelling the operations of UNITA from Zaire, coming through using the former FNLA bases and villages to try and attack Luanda. MK played a very prominent role. Unfortunately, this is not prominently covered in the MK history, that most of the documentation that you get on MK history. Then after the negotiations that were a result of the Battle of Cuito-Cuana Valley, MK had to withdraw from Angola. It had to move to Tanzania and Uganda. And there were mass upsurges inside the country, and banning the ANC. The ANC flag was carried throughout the country. Literally, the ANC was unbanned by the masses. The regime was losing control of the country with the instruction from the order, the command from the commander-in-chief, OR, that the country must render ungovernable and apartheid unworkable. And also we saw international and domestic capital starting to raise alarm about the situation, and sanctions also were starting to bite on the apartheid regime. And then on 1994, which was the last phase, was when de Klerk made his February speech, where he unbanned all the liberation movements, including the ANC and SACP, and also released the all political prisoners. And MK had to cease the armed struggle, but we also saw the emergence of the third force, where the regime was using other elements as a proxy in trying to thwart the revolutionary advance. MK started establishing self-defense units to protect the communities from the attacks by these third forces, by the third force. And then there was the Transitional Executive Council that was established to run the country. In 1993, MK disbanded. Again, in 1993, we lost our Chief of Staff, Chris Hani, which also accelerated the process towards the first democratic elections in April 1994. And MK then also began the process of integration into the South African National Defence Force with other forces. Then coming to the MK revolutionary agenda, the analysis from the first team that established MK was that South Africa was no means suited to classical guerrilla warfare because of the complex tired topography, lack of a friendly border. All the borders around were still, for instance, most of the countries, Mozambique and Angola, was under Portuguese control. Namibia was still under South Africa, Southwest Africa. Zimbabwe was still called Rhodesia. Zambia ultimately got independence in the mid-1960s. So most of the countries it was only Botswana we called Botswana land that time, Swaziland, Lesotho, and it was very difficult to penetrate the country. We had no peasantry in South Africa because of most of the countryside, the farmlands were run by the white commercial farmers, and they were also used as a bulwark against the liberation movement. There was a huge security apparatus. There was a strong centralized state, apartheid state with powerful resources, and was backed up by Western support. And they could also, because of the communication networks, they could actually respond very swiftly to whatever threat that was facing the country. The basis of the armed struggle in terms of the Green Book after the visit to Vietnam was on General Von Nguyen Giap's 5 fighting factors. That there must be first a just cause, providing moral superiority over the enemy. There should be a correct theory and leadership, a united and determined people, and the invincible art of guerrilla warfare, and there must be also international solidarity for the revolution to succeed. The concept of MK's revolutionary army consisted of the core, which was the trained elements that were trained in the various camps and in the various countries abroad, the commanders that were trained in exile. And then the next level, the next layer was then the revolutionary armed people, those guys that were trained by the guerrillas that had infiltrated the country, which were called the grenade squads. Some were called the revolutionary armed people, and also this is where also the self-defense units evolved. Then the third layer was the elements of the enemy forces that were won over the side of the revolution. We saw this with the Bantustan forces, particularly in Transkei, Bokutatswana and Venda, where they turned against the ruling elites in those Bantustans. And then also the intelligence sources within the enemy, which were working for the revolution. MK did not envisage the capacity of winning over the sections of the enemy forces as it happened in the Russian and the Cuban revolutions, as well as in Portugal. Coming to operations, a snapshot on operations that were undertaken increased as years went by. Especially from the 1980s, there were more than 39 operations undertaken, and the highest number of operations were in 1988. This comes from the Maryland Global Terrorism Database, which monitors operations by insurgent forces in various countries. So the operations were actually showing that MK was increasing its presence inside the country. We saw mainly in the 1980s special operations that were undertaken against especially by the unit led by Comrade Bani Molokwane, the hitting of Sasol, Fort Rekerwochte, Quebec, and other strategic installations. We saw the emergence of small units in the townships, hitting the enemy when the townships were occupied by the South African Defence Force, not the South African National Defence Force. And then in reviewing the successes of the armed struggle, is that what is important to note is that the armed struggle was more than anything else an instrument, a tool to ensure the destruction of the inhuman apartheid system, as well as the transfer of power to the people. And this is encompassed in the in Umkhonto weSizwe's manifesto, that it was not only created to develop the forces of revolution and for the seizure of power, but the MK was also contrived to defend and guarantee the gains of the revolution. If we assess the success of guerrilla struggles, is that guerrilla struggle is a weapon of the weak over the strong, and its ultimate efficacy can only be judged by the final outcome, that has it fundamentally did result in fundamental changes being achieved. And secondly, if we look at MK in particular, was this change achieved by MK's contribution? So any assessment of the success of MK has to take into account the overall impact of its military operations, its capacity, its growing capacity to strike at the enemy, the ability to inspire the people, the better prospects of survival amongst the people, the linking of its actions to the mass upsurges, neutralizing enemy agents and informants, as well as rendering apartheid unworkable and the country ungovernable. So if we assess the armed struggle, it should not be taken in isolation, but it should be considered as part of the pillars, the 4 pillars of the struggle, which in combination succeeded in replacing apartheid with democracy. And if you look at the manifesto of MK, it says that its objective is the overthrow of the nationalist government the abolition of white supremacy, and the winning of liberty, democracy, and full national rights and equality for all the people of this country. And MK, in this sense, succeeded in achieving those objectives. Whatever analysis that can come in terms of how effective was its operations, at the end of the day, the objective was achieved. So MK succeeded in its armed struggle. Now, looking at the post-apartheid challenges, the intention ultimately was that MK was going to was focusing on the armed seizure of political power through insurrection. But this did not happen because the apartheid government was forced to negotiate. And it became apparent to the leadership of the movement that negotiations were not going to lead to the consummation of the objectives of the national democratic revolution as envisaged in the Freedom Charter. But it was agreed that if negotiations could lead to the transfer of power to the people, then the transitional period wherein power will be consolidated in favor of the revolutionary process will ensure that certain objectives of the national democratic revolution are achieved. There were concerns also about issues around the negotiation process, particularly the certain clauses that ensured that property rights would not be interfered with, and that the armed forces would not be fully taken over by the liberation movement, could actually not lead to the success of the national democratic revolution. But the movement had prepared itself and had prepared the masses that they should understand that the negotiations are another venue of struggle, that ultimately, once the transfer of power has been achieved, then there will be a consolidation until the objectives of the national democratic revolution are achieved. Then looking at issues that concerned MK cadres in the post-apartheid South Africa was the restructuring of the security forces, primarily the challenges of integration, and secondly, lacking a political home for MK cadres. I'll get into that, but let me start here with the integration, the challenges of integration. Integration process encountered teething problems at first when it started. For example, SADF soldiers, primarily the white soldiers, struggled with accepting MK soldiers as equals. There were past political differences that were still there during the integration process, and residues of racism and ethnicity were not preempted before the process started. The process was very slow and frustrating for most people. People were subjected to all sorts of exclusion tactics around ranking and placement. Members were forced to endure prolonged stays at the assembly base at Valmansdal, which resulted in a lot of uprisings there. And with regard to military courses, military training courses, these were largely one-sided, whites forming the majority of the officer corps, and the blacks, the Africans, so-called coloreds and Indians constituting the majority of the lower ranks. The consequences of this was that there were protests and marches that took place in other parts of the country as people felt they were being unfairly treated in the integration process. Some of the MK comrades marched to the union buildings in order to draw the attention of the leadership to the problems. We also saw shootings at Bloemfontein, at Tempe, and in Phalaborwa. Most of the military tribunals that emerged during that period affected mostly so-called non-statutory forces, and in particular MK. Ultimately, the Minister of Defense at that time appointed a commission of inquiry, which was led by Advocacy, the Sitai Commission, which made the recommendations. And also the then President, Comrade Nelson Mandela, also tried to intervene in solving some of the problems. The interventions that were proposed at that time was that it should be a political education program to bring all these different forces together, because it was acknowledged again that also the SADF, although it called itself a professional army or a professional military force, it was also politicized because it was serving political objectives that were instilled amongst those who were serving in the defense force. So this political program was imbued into the civil-military relations program, so as to acknowledge the importance of the defense force accepting the primacy of the political leadership of the country. There were also efforts at redressing the composition of the rank structure through upgrading those who were disadvantaged by the past dispensations. There was the reviewing of the racial and ethnic imbalances within the rank structures, particularly within the Air Force and the Navy, which mostly the officer corps was still predominantly white, and also addressing the rationalization process of the future demobilized soldiers. Although these issues, especially with regard to the rank structures, addressing the racial and ethnic imbalances, and also issues of demobilization, still need to be sorted out through the Department of Military Veterans, and also the question of the reserve force being largely populated by former SADF or former statutory forces. The non-statutory forces are still not yet fully integrated into the reserve force, as well as the possible redeployment of those who have been demobilized from the military into other security services and agencies. And looking at MK role in the unity and renewal of the African National Congress. What needs to be taken into consideration seriously here is that MK cadres were not just mere soldiers, but were soldiers with a political mission. And this was instilled in the camps through political education program. and was part of the military training program. MK cadres were supposed to demonstrate military proficiency, but also have a thorough understanding of the policies and programs of the ANC, as well as an understanding of the international situation. So MK cadres are actually ANC members before they become MK cadres. And as such, they have a very huge concern about developments in the political sphere, especially when it pertains to the ANC. So cadres of MK were concerned with three main organizational shortcomings and dangers that continue to bedevil the ANC in the post-1994 period. First, there was the challenges of governance and political management of state power, which had impacted negatively on the character and values of the ANC. We see problems of corruption and factionalism. The second element is that the political life of the organization revolving around the insidious internal strife and factional battles for power. And the third element is that the organizational capabilities, the structure of the ANC, its systems and processes are starting not to match the tasks and demands of the current phase of the revolution. Moreover, there were concerns with the pace of the organizational renewal, so that the ANC should be in a position of dealing with the current challenges, particularly with the dismal local government elections recently, with the ANC losing its ruling party status in 5 major metros and obtaining just 47% of the total national electoral votes. The argument here is that the movement has reached a defining moment since the democratic breakthrough, and it has to either adapt or die. So, looking back at the ANC's history from its formation since its inception in 1912, the ANC has always managed to adapt to changing circumstances. So this issue of organizational renewal is not something new to the movement. It has actually started in 1941. There was a concern raised by the Transvaal Johannesburg branch of the ANC around the constitution. The ANC constitution then had two levels. There was an upper house, a lower house. The upper house was occupied by the chiefs and the elite, and then the lower house was what they were called commoners. And this actually made the ANC inflexible in terms of dealing with the circumstances that were there. And also we saw women were also not recognized as full members of the ANC. So in 1943, a new constitution was adopted, which eradicated all those elements. Again, in 1949, we saw the program of action, which was introduced by the Youth League, emphasizing on mass mobilization and direct action, leading to the Defiance Campaign, for example. In the 1950s, we saw the M Plan, which ultimately propelled the movement to the 1955 Congress of the People, leading to the adoption of the Freedom Charter. In 1960, we saw the formation of MK after the banning of the liberation movements. And the 1962 Lobatse Conference suspended the ANC constitution then, so as to conform to the changed circumstances. And again, in 1969, the Morogoro Conference adopted a new strategy and tactics, and also ensured the acceptance of other races into the movement. So here you can see that the ANC was able to change and adapt to the new circumstances. This is what the argument is about, that renewal is not something new, it can be done. That the ANC should change its strategy, tactics, and structures to adapt to the changed circumstances. So we need cadres that are able to carry out the new political tasks in addressing the changed circumstances. What is proposed in the framework for organizational renewal and design is that the ANC must retain its dual character as a liberation movement in order to fulfill its historic mission, as well as a political party to readjust its organizational machinery to be more responsive to the new demands, so as not to taken over by the circumstances. Efforts should be made to strengthen the Veterans League and ensure that it becomes the lifeblood of the ANC, as well as strengthening of a united MK Military Veterans League or structure, which must combine the two disbanded structures of MKMVA and the Council, and come up with a structure that is going to be an effective tool within the movement. Also, there should be an emphasis on the cadre policy, that the new ANC cadre should be able to adapt to the changed circumstances. It must be informed and ideologically grounded to pursue the objectives of the movement. It must be rooted in amongst the people and serve the people. The cadre that must come up must be a person who's an effective organizer and a teacher, must be a loyal and disciplined cadre, and that cadre should be an advocate of anti-corruption and anti-crime campaigns. Also, that there should be a council of elders established within the Veterans League, where the Veterans League would create the structure to assist in terms of guiding the movement, in terms of its future policies and strategies. That the Veterans League should not contest leadership positions within the ANC, but must be a guiding torch to the entire movement. With regard to addressing the issues of military veterans, especially the Liberation War veterans, the government should establish a standalone Ministry of Military Veterans. The Liberation War veterans must be utilized in all areas of the security services, such as the securing of national key points. They should play a central role in uplifting the values and discipline of the movement. The government should facilitate health services in remote areas where there are no military hospitals. Fast track the review and amendment of the Military Veterans Act. Also, the Liberation War veterans must be, they should be provided with housing. There should be an extension of services, health and education to their dependents. Currently, health services are not provided to the descendants of the Liberation War veterans, only to the to the so-called statutory forces, and also for the deceased veterans. There should be an effort to assist their descendants to obtain these services. And also the usage of military, the movement and the government should consider the usage of military paraphernalia and weaponry of the disbanded former liberation military structures, as well as other groupings in the country. Is this not posing a threat of private armies being developed? And there should be also a consideration of Liberation War veterans providing security services for government buildings and institutions. Lastly, there is the need to engage with the Veterans League on options with regards to its role regarding former MK cadres. How is the Veterans League accommodating MK cadres? Primarily because the Veterans League is largely constituted of former MK cadres. Also, the need to investigate the possibilities of a provisional rescinding of clause 7.7 of the ANC Constitution regarding the age of 60 years and the period of 30 years that is required for one to become a member of the Veterans League. This is with regard to the Young Lion Detachment, only for the Young Lion Detachment, so that they can become part of the Veterans League, to strengthen it and to ensure that the Veterans League becomes a tool that can effectively ensure the renewal of the ANC and also ensure unity within the ANC. Thank you very much. Jamandla.
Away. Yeah. I think I'll be echoing the sentiment of everybody that we really want to thank you, Comrade Castro, for the effort put. It's not easy to summarize 60 years, the multifaceted struggle within a period given to you, which was less than an hour. But I think you far exceeded our expectations. And thank you for that. Comrades, we're going to be opening up for discussion. And I was meant to have reinforced a bit on the presentation. Now, I did send to Castro and comrades whilst I was in Durban what I would have made as inputs. The phases he outlined, I made a few inputs. I want to take them as read so that we have an engagement. Suffice to say that I think we may have to agree on certain critical assumptions that this presentation should make. One of which would be MK, as Castro said, as a departure point, was a political army, not an army of mercenaries or soldiers, professional soldiers. I think it's important because there is a narrative very subtle and sometimes very open of assuming that an MK soldier is the one who has a weapon, who marches to go and bury a comrade, without knowing the politics of MK in the context of a role of an MK soldier in the 4 pillars of the struggle. I think that ought to be, from the presentation, an issue we may want to build as a narrative in the 60th anniversary, so that we change the public perception and even perception among ANC members and the alliance members on understanding the real role of MK as a political solution. The second assumption we may have to make open for discussion is that in the various phases that Castro has elucidated quite clearly, each phase had its own impact within the context of the strategy and tactics of the ANC in the evolution of MK. Just to illustrate, there was a particular intention around the sabotage campaign. It has a limited objective, but it had a particular objective to achieve, one of which was to ensure that the blows we suffered in the early 60s, including arrest of our leadership, was not going to lead to demoralization and immobilization of our people from active struggle. And to a great extent, those blowing of pylons, institution, symbols of apartheid, including killing of informers, which partly led to the hanging up of Usilemini, ought to be seen and made as a context that it was meant to achieve those limited objectives defined by the reality, objective and subjective factors of the time. And it will be distinct from the same another phase that had particular objectives. I think those we need to lift up. Because one Tripolino had its own objectives, which mainly was to return home, but also to be able to forge Southern African link in strategic alliances that began to see us move in the direction of mobilizing liberation movements like MPLA, SWAPO, and them. And MK was central, because that history is not coming out. It's coming out as if it was political leadership only, as OR, Semi Yoma, and Agostino Neto interacting. It is not coming out of MK formations in Congo and other areas, beginning to be central in driving that objective. So we need to give more life and meaning to the particular campaigns that define the 60-year history. And thirdly, I think we may want to agree or debate that the 60 years of existence of MK is an epoch with many phases, because it was a continuum of the struggle and with other means, which mainly were about the armed struggle. So that we do not have a fragmented interpretation of the role of MK. I want to make an illustration here, just before I open up for discussion. One recalls when he came back home, a certain very weird and queer sort of narrative emerged, which was unintended, but it actually led to, which was intended to minimize the role of MK, and therefore brought unintended consequence of wanting to marginalize MK within the ANC structures. And it gained ground until to a point of factional battles, deliberately wanting also MK not to be part of renewal of the ANC in terms of organizational renewal. In the West End, for instance, when we came, we deployed in Inkatha was taking people. Leaders of the time were actually spreading it among our people as winning them against Inkatha. That in fact, these were not fighting, they were busy staying outside and doing nothing. We were fighting here, as if we were threatened, up to a point where we said, consciously as leadership of the area, as MK, no one stands for any position in a branch, so that we make a clear statement that we are selfless soldiers. We are actually political animals. I'm just illustrating, I can go into depth about what finally led to divisions that one didn't anticipate. And I think it was across the country, to a point where even decisions taken about the fact that MK must sit in PEC's branch leadership and them to do political education was just a mere rhetoric, never translated into action, because There was a narrative that these people are not necessarily what they say they are. They were just sitting in exile and were the fighters. And it brought certain unintended consequences of dividing the ANC as a mother body from MK. I think it is still there, people, as analyze and go deeper as you go to provinces in terms of the 60th anniversary, because each area of struggle can be localized in those areas, and therefore people can begin to understand MK as MK within the ANC. I think I should end there to say that there's a lot of work to be done in addition to the good work that Castro has put before us. I'm opening for discussion there. I think my inputs in the overall in terms of qualitative analysis of the various campaigns, I put it on paper and I can further input as we move along. I think you'll raise your hands now. I recognize Malik.
Yes, Commissioner. I think mine is just a combination of one, a comment, but then also something to think about. I mean, like it's not a question that's necessarily directed to Castro, but it is obviously something that one has been thinking about. Castro, one of the issues that is clearly stated in the presentation, and of course I agree with it, is the fact that we didn't really have the classical peasantry that could be, depended upon, as you'll find in other revolutions. Now, one question I've always had, having observed after our own misery, the misery of the Palestinians and how they execute theirs from what is called an urban setup, which is effectively something similar, if you like, from a geographical point of view, because they have similar challenges. They have similar challenges, being completely surrounded by the big, bear, if you like, or animal that they have to try and continuously fight, against. Now, I'm actually asking myself a question that says, I wonder if it is not a strategy that we could have probably executed, then maybe to some form of success. I mean, we've always defined our people as effectively our forests, in one way or another. So that's just one thing that made me to actually just think and reflect about that. But moving forward now, because that is gone, it's water under the bridge. The question then that actually just comes to, myself is, how today as XMK do we actually help the ANC in the face of an intransigent ANC leadership that is simply not making any pathways available to being approached and sharing ideas, certainly from an MK point of view? And I'm asking this question because obviously in the 60s, our commissar may, God be pleased with him, Chris, when he penned the Ahadi Memorandum, he was facing similar demons as we are facing today in one way or another. And of course, in all the other, in the 80s, the troubles in 84, of which, some of the comrades we have here, were, experienced directly, and of course indirectly. Some of us who joined slightly later than that specific period. Now, the issue here again is during that time, we had a leadership in the form of OR and his collective leadership that did make possible for MK to intervene in the body politics of the ANC as the ANC was executing the revolution. Today, we're in a different context where, as Moss said, MK is something that's probably almost despised, if you like. No one takes it seriously. How do we actually then overcome this trouble, this specific challenge to be heard and be seen, as the previous versions of MK, as I've indicated, managed to intervene in the past and they were given a hearing? That's something that is not directed only to Castro, but it's something that I'd like to put up there for a reflection. Thank you. And Castro, thanks for great work once again.
Thanks.
It looks like I might, if Moss is not there. Moss, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm saying.
Okay.
We've noted. What I say is, I'm noting Lawrence. Let's give him a platform. Lawrence. Lawrence, you recognize.
Comrade Tammy, you are muted.
Yes, no, I've resolved the problem.
Okay.
What I wanted to raise, commanders and commissars, is that when this thing happened, there is a stage that we have jumped by mistake. Remember, when the rent boycott was part of MK, because it's where I started to know Rapumulikane in that process where we were forming street committees. Luckily, we were based in terms of working at Jabavu, Central Western Jabavu and White City. MK was involved in that stage through using the people of Sanko. That part, it seems that you have jumped it, not deliberately. The second part of the whole discussion, comrades, I didn't hear anyone mentioning that we were neglected, firstly. And secondly, branches and region didn't want us, they didn't want to include us. We were a threat. To some extent, in other areas, we were hated because we are from exile, we are members of Umkhonto weSizwe. They felt that we are politically inclined than them, which is true anyway. But we were neglected. At the second time, we were never given an opportunity or having a coordinator of including members of MK in the branches of ANC. They fear us. Some, they hated us. We need to mention that we didn't go smoothly as a process till this 6 years that we're going to celebrate tomorrow. That is what I wanted to raise, commanders and commissars. I pause.
Okay, point noted. Comrade Motoman.
Yes, I do. Leadership. Good evening. Commanders and officers. Once more, I should also add on the congratulations, or rather saluting the job well done. In order for me not to, or rather to be specific and try to save the time, leadership, Comrade Castro, I would rather seek to engage. In a sense, it is a rider from Comrade Malik's point of further discussion that pertains to the renewal of the ANC as the political soldier. What role we play to ensure that the ANC does not die? Because if it does not adapt, it certainly would die. But you are citing 3 shortcomings that is post-94, I think, currently the challenges that are facing the movement. One is the political mismanagement of the political power, of course, with the factionalism as people are vying for power, which also you are correctly citing the question of the structural dysfunctionality, if I may put it that way. To me, it speaks directly to the dysfunctionality or non-existence of the branches as the basic units of power. Comrade Lawrence is citing a question of marginalization, but maybe he missed the point. You have illustrated very clearly, or rather, Comrade Morse indicated very clearly of the dynamics that emerge even in the Western, what you call West Rand, people sidelining MK. But my point is, the point, how, in the face, how are we to achieve all these sort of pointers, strategic pointers to solving the issues of the movement, if, as it has been correctly cited, 43, 49, even 69, when the ANC was faced with those challenges, they were subsequently calling even the Honey Memorandum, subsequent calling to the MIM movement, which yielded to the voice of the people to say, let's have a conference. How are we going, really? How are we? Because the current leadership does not seem to be prone to accept the reality that the ANC is about to die, it must adapt. And in that fashion, by them resisting to have a consultative conference where we can unpack everything as it is put on this paper and other papers, because we do know there is a problem. We know what to do, but how are we going to reorganize? How are we to re-strategize in line, of course, with the strategic tactical documents that we are having to correct the situation? That's the question that I think you can assist, not probably by form of a direct answer from you, Leadership Castro, my commissar, but as a form of engagement, as to say exactly what is it that needed to be done, because as we discuss, we must come up with further strong recommendation that would pierce this blockade in front of us. Let me pause there for a while. Thank you, Leadership.
Thanks, Comrade Nochaman. Let's take Africa. The point is noted. I think we'll deliberate on it as we engage the deliberations on all matters. Comrade Africa, notice your hand. Comrade Africa.
Tornado, you are muted if you're talking.
Yeah, until he sorts himself out when he's ready.
Tornado, you are not, we can't hear you.
We shall proceed. He'll sort himself out, and then when he gets into the second round, he'll join us. Comrades, the issues have been raised. Some are similar, some are necessarily distinct. Castro, I'm sure you've been taking notes. I'll give you an opportunity to take the first time.
Can I continue, Commissar?
No, continue, Kat.
Okay, no, Thanks, Commissar. I would like to start with Comrade Tammy's question with regard to the stage that maybe I might have overlooked with regard to MK involvement, with regard to rank boycotts, as well as involvement with structures such as SANCO in the townships. Operation Zikomo in particular was intended to play that role. That's why I refer to it, where there was a huge infiltration of MK cadres to go into the townships and the villages to try and revive these structures, and also to assist these structures to understand the goals and objectives of the liberation movement, as well as in also training the units that were there, the small units that had emerged from the townships where people were organized, where especially the young lions were organizing themselves into small units, throwing petrol bombs towards the police and the SADF that were occupying the townships, and to arm them with sophisticated weapons such as the AK and also the grenades, the F1 grenades. So this was a close interaction that started to emerge, where MK was interacting with the masses on the ground, interacting in building that mass upsurge against the regime in order to build as a build-up towards people's war, and ultimately with the intention of going into insurrection. So that stage I did highlight it, although I didn't dwell on it deeply because of the length of the presentation. Coming to Comrade Malik's, Commissar Malik's question or comment, I think I agree fully that there is a serious challenge with regard to the leadership failing to acknowledge the important role that MK can play in rebuilding the movement and in recovering the lost space that we have been witnessing, especially from towards the late 1990s to the 2000s, and ultimately, as we now have lost these big metros and the capital city being run by an opposition party. That is very sad. What is quite interesting is that if you look at the history of the movement, is that especially during the armed struggle period, Morogoro came as a result of the memorandum, as you correctly stated, concerns about failure to take the armed struggle into the country, the movement failing to engage with the population inside South Africa, and the challenges that they were facing in exile, where most cadres were concerned about why they were still kept in camps like Kongwa instead of being sent back to the country. Although the conditions then were very difficult, as you said clearly, that we couldn't wage a classical type of guerrilla warfare, because of the nature of the conditions, the terrain, we know did not have a peasantry. South Africa was a established, had a well-established security apparatus. So it was not very easy to penetrate guerrillas into the country so that they could operate effectively as in most countries where the classical guerrilla warfare was successfully waged. There was also the concerns that arose in the mid-1980s, 1984, where then there were the mutiny that occurred in Angola, in Vienna, also in Pango. It was clear that there were serious concerns. The Stewart Commission and also other interventions revealed that there were major concerns about cadres being trained and then not being utilized as having been trained to be able to go and wage or implement what they had been trained to do. The leadership failing to engage effectively on the ground with the cadres to such an extent that the only way that these comrades had to decided to protest, and that protest as defined as mutiny ultimately led to Ikabwe conference. So Ikabwe tried to address again those concerns and to emphasize on the waging of the armed struggle, taking it to a higher level and making sure that the comrades were also given the opportunity to go and execute operations inside the country. So in this instance, now I'm trying to link this with the questions that what role should we play currently in the ANC renewal, as well as being effective in terms of maybe participating in the branches and the regions of the ANC. I think the most common thread that I tried to put or to place in the presentation was the element of the Veterans League. That, for me personally, that is my personal view, the only option that we have currently to be able to really institute or to introduce changes and to make sure that the renewal project becomes a success is through the Veterans League, That we play a very effective role in making the Veterans League a torchlight of the movement, in guiding the movement in terms of what route should it take if it wants to grasp the current challenges and be able to deal with these challenges. Obviously, it's true. I agree with Comrade Tami that we've been marginalized in the branches, in the regions. When you are an MK, I remember, for instance, when I was still working in Durban, there was even a situation where they will even change the venue of a meeting so that I could not be part of the meeting, because they knew that when I was there, I would challenge that will deal with the political issues. What they wanted to deal with was about elections, who becomes what, who, instead of dealing with the political challenges that the branch was facing. So this it's something that goes throughout. In fact, throughout the country, comrades are always complaining about one and the same thing, that they are being marginalized by the ANC, and yet they are, the way I look at it, they are the solution to the current challenges that the ANC is facing. I think I'll stop there for now.
Okay. I'm not sure. I saw Ombi had raised their hand. I'm not sure Africa had raised and then disappeared. Let's take Ombi. And are you still having the appetite, or are your issues raised?
Yes, I just have some comments that maybe I should make. Thank you very much to Comrade Castro for the thorough presentation he did. And we appreciate it, Comrade Castro. It's a very good presentation and a guide to this discussion. I have some few things, a few points that I want to clarify. Is that first is that when we landed back from the exile as MK cadres, we failed to analyze the concrete situation. And I'm saying we failed because we did not understand what was happening in the country. And we were waiting for the next order from somewhere. And the people who were waiting orders from were actually busy with other things. So basically, we failed to analyze the situation. And I'm part of that failure. You know, we failed to analyze the situation. We did not understand the situation. So we waited for orders like we were in Kibashe or Uganda or, you know, wherever, and we did not get those orders. And that's why we were disorientated. And then we expected that we would be deployed in the branches in the various places. But the people we expected them to deploy were concerned with other things. And this is why I say we failed to understand the situation. We can't change what happened in 1990 or 1994. We can't change it. It has happened and it's part of history now. The issue is what to do from now onwards. That is what we must look at as former MK soldiers. Now, the key issue that I want to put across in this meeting is that first, we must learn to separate elections from conference. Elections and conference are not the same things and should not necessarily be married to each other, should not necessarily be a couple in one bedroom. Elections and conference, we must learn to separate them. From now onwards, we must separate them. So this issue of MK Unity Conference we're struggling about, it's not really necessary to have a MK Unity Conference. We can have elections of leaders separate on one day, 1 month, and another, then we have conferences. Conference should be for competent delegates, but the election is for everybody who is MK. He must be in a position to elect or choose whoever he wants to choose for his MK part of whether it's detachment or area or what. You know, it should be that way. But conference is a different issue. Conference is discussion papers, policy documents. You know, all of you need competent people there.
I don't even know how to access
you know, when you are going to discuss agriculture and land ownership, you need people who are competent in that field. You know, and when you are going to discuss security, you need people from army, from the security clusters who are retired to come and discuss that field. So what I'm saying is, what I'm proposing to this meeting and to you, comrades, is that from now onwards, think of conference and elections separately. Divorce them. They are not the same. Divorce them, separate them, and they should be done separately, so that we don't get all this confusion of now we're waiting for the conference. The Western Cape is still waiting for the conference. The Youth League is still waiting for the conference. The Northwest Province is still waiting for the conference. We don't need to mix conferences with elections. I am saying to this forum, let us take a resolution to separate elections and conferences from now on. We separate, like we elect the municipality. We don't need a conference to elect mayors and councillors and so on. It should be the same to elect ANC leaders or MK leaders. We don't need a conference. We must just elect the leaders. The conferences must be on another day, another month, somewhere else. You know, so we're stuck there. But the main issue I wanted to put on the table is that we as MK, when we came back from exile, we failed to analyze the situation. We failed to analyze, and we're still waiting for the orders that we used to take in Uganda and what. And those orders never came. And that's why we're still confused even today. So wake up, MK soldier, wake up. The terrain has changed. The terrain has changed. The conditions have changed. Everything has changed. You must also change to adapt to the situation. You must change. You cannot continue with old tactics, old way of thinking when the environment and the terrain has changed. We've crossed Limpopo. Now the terrain has changed. Think afresh as MK soldiers. Thank you very much.
Yeah, my point made. Imagine and so forth. I think I will allow for Castro to take this, and then now all of us must engage. It's not a question to Castro.
Sorry, Commissioner. I just wanted to, before Castro goes ahead, I wanted to see if I can read the post that Tornado made because he couldn't speak, that Africa made because he couldn't speak. So maybe with my reading disabilities, I can actually quickly read that and understand that there are also a number of comments on our Facebook feed. I have absolutely no idea how we're going to do that, but someone is busy helping us because I'm completely challenged when it comes to Facebook and all that. But we will find a way of getting those comments. Someone is busy working on those. And of course, maybe out of respect, Moss, if you do not mind, I'll say let's quickly take Ambassador as his team before I go ahead read, and then you can hand over to Castro, if that's okay with you. Her hand has been up. It must be a little bit sore now.
Yeah, I'm only noticing it. Sorry, Ambassador, you can shoot without killing anyone in the group.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, comrades, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. I just want to make a small correction before I start. When I'm on this platform, I'm not ambassador. I'm Comrade Tenjo Mtimso, normally Zokomani, Moli Masebe. Because sometimes when you're an ambassador, then you are supposed to act ambassadorially or to talk ambassadorially. So I think that when we are in this platform, we act as commanders and commissars of Mkondo Wesizo, and we are equal according to our detachment. That's the first point. Second point, I just am not quite clear. It's a question that keeps coming up, and I just wanted to be clear about this. But before that question, I just wanted to find out, thank you very much, Comrade Castro. I just wanted to find out, maybe I missed this because I lost contact for a few moments. When we came back and post-1994, when did we as MK become almost in tatters ourselves? Because when I didn't hear that, probably Castro attended to that. Because all of us, when we talk as MK, BMK. And sometimes I get confused, which one, who is this MK? Unless I know you. But there are also comrades that I knew as MK who today I could not stand next to and claim to be their comrades. So what I missed, Castro, if you can just quickly get into that, because I know that the history is a bit comfortable to deal with because it's in the past. But the immediate history and the present and the future, as one comrade was saying, that's what's to be done now, knowing all these things that happened and with all the mistakes that we made, as Africa was saying, that we waited for orders and as the comrades were saying that they were marginalized, all these things. But how did we get to be where we are ourselves? Because it may well be that because of where we are ourselves, the ANC, as Malik is saying, I don't know who is the ANC, but perhaps the NEC, because he referred to OR Tambo, perhaps the NEC, as led by Comrade Cyril, has been intransigent, but that is the NEC. I just want us to look at the old terminology we used, criticism and self-criticism, so that we can then deal with others. But firstly, just this, maybe I'll come back later when Castro has clarified or reminded me in his presentation, which is a very good presentation. When did we get to be where we are, we as MK combatants? Thanks. And how did we get there? Thanks.
But in a sense, your correction is very limited. Henceforth, there's no ambassador here.
Yeah.
There is an ambassador outside of this country. Sorry for that. That in terms of protocol, in the rules of the game. Secondly, the point you're raising is quite fundamental. We are not tracing the steps to correct what made us where we are is secret path. That's new and avoids that is new. I don't see hands, and for now, comrades with due respect. There's many elements in the presentation that make me get this. They will just point us by question. Yeah. Each phase is discussed in detail, whether it's from 61 to 64, the sabotage campaign, and the launch of 20 on its own, required by sexual and serious theoretical critique, and also being able to locate it properly, what has become of us. So I'm humbly suggesting that let's move into answering the questions made till me. Tomorrow is our day. And I think what committee is raising, we don't have the luxury of time to debate about the history. We have the luxury of time to debate what we correct about that history to reposition MK in the socio-political and ideological landscape today moving forward, or tomorrow moving forward. And in that context, let's reflect on that perspective. Important to draw lessons from the past, but more energy and thought process and other efforts put on the present to the future. I'm open for discussion. Castro, you see how the sequence answering. I think you've already taken the first round of discussion. Then after that, it's no more about Castro answering, it's about us engaging now in the pertinent issues that either have been raised or require attention in the first. Open for discussion.
Castro, this is for you. Just let me just read it quickly with all my disabilities. As I said, it's from Comrade Tonado. My apologies for my network connection. Good morning. Okay, I wanted to suggest that the age be reduced from 60 years to 50 years, and from 40 years unbroken history in the ANC to 30 years unbroken history. In this case, we can have more comrades swelling the ranks of the Veterans League. A united MK should not form a league of its own because we're a depleting lot. We need to join the ANC Veterans League for an effective participation of MK comrades in the ANC branches. I have a view that as we revive, in brackets as opposed to renew, the ANC all branches must be disbanded and let MK comrades oversee the relaunching of the ANC branches. and MK comrades not stand for elections in branches, but be part of branch political education desks. Yeah, and of course, he goes on and talk about the marginalization of MK members in the ANC branches, probably not everywhere. So, it's a good to have that balance as well. In my region, Kulena, I mean, what 111 ANC members prefer MK members. ANC members prefer MK members. I have led my branch in 2016 to 2018. I'm requested again to stand as a ward chairperson again in 2020 because members of the ANC have realized the poor performance of the ANC in the recent local government. We need to understand. So it is clear that there is no one even terrain. It sort of differs. The topography changes from one area to the other. So I thought actually just cut you in on that, Castro, and you can go ahead and engage with some of the issues, and of course, we will be able to assist you as well with some of the questions.
No, thanks, Commissar Malik. Actually, looking at the latest inputs, it's more comments than questions, yes, except for the question that came from Comrade Siteji. I think in approaching these issues, I think I agree fully with Comrade Commandant Long on that when coming back into the country, we fail to analyze the situation. And it's not necessarily that we failed due to our own, perhaps, incapacity to analyze and be able to address the situation, but it was because of the fact that we were not organized. There was a lack of organization from the side of MK. The focus that time of the leadership was mainly around negotiations, and MK tended to play a backroom role. It wasn't really taken seriously into consideration. And there was no structure in which MK could participate fully and effectively. Hence, this was our biggest shortcoming. And this links to the question that Comrade Stage was asking. When did we become in tatters ourselves? That when MKMVA was established, it wasn't really clarified in terms of its political standing. That it was not a league as other leagues within the movement. It is merely a structure to look after the welfare as well as the legacy aspects of MK, as well as the issues that MK needs to address. When there were efforts to try and establish a league with the league within the ANC representing MK veterans, it became clear that no, such a structure could not be there because of we were a dying species. So ultimately, once we all gone, that league would not have existed. So it was at the Polokwane conference, then the Veterans League was created. But unfortunately, the majority of MK cadres, the young lions in particular, who constitute the biggest part of MK currently, were not accommodated in the Veterans League because of the age and period limitations, which Comrade Tornadoes Vung is referring to. Going back to MKMVA, MKMVA became a political entity whilst it was not supposed to such an extent that it also got embroiled in the factional challenges that were facing the movement. And we saw, for example, certain elements using MKMVA to promote certain views, which, as far as I'm concerned, this was not supposed to be supposed to be happening. But again, this is precisely because MK cadres were not being involved effectively within ANC structure. Hence, it was even possible for certain elements to use MKMVA for their own selfish or enriching intentions. If we had a political home, like for example, as you are suggesting now, that we should have young lions being accommodated into the Veterans League, I think such challenges can be averted, and the new structure, the united structure that should be established for MK be mainly focusing on issues pertaining to the welfare, the needs of MK veterans, as well as the legacy, promoting the heritage and preserving the heritage of MK. But the political sphere, the home where MK should really participate in assisting the movement moving forward, is within the Veterans League. So, in a nutshell, I think I would end it there. Again, I think I agree also with Commander Mshongo that this is a serious problem with all conferences. If you go to a conference, MK, Youth League, Women's League conferences, people are just obsessed about elections, slates, who's going to be the president, who's going to be the what, instead of the real issues, because the real issues are the policy issues, because those people who become elected have to implement what has been decided by conference. So we need to have a way of relooking how we structure our conferences in future. I think I agree with Commander Mshongo on that scope, that perhaps there should be maybe that phase where we only deal with policy and ideological issues, and then have a process where then elections can then take place separately from that of discussing policy issues. Thank you.
Any bite now, without making it a question and answer session at Castro? Reflections on issues raised, and also some issues that perhaps are pertinent in the presentation that Castro made. Open for discussion.
Can
Maybe at this stage.
can I go almost just a brief addition to what Castro said in answering Comrade Sisti on where we actually went wrong. Just a few additions there. May I, Honor?
You can proceed, and then we follow the system.
Okay. No, thanks. I mean, look, I think in the main, my view is that, of course, I agree with Comrade Castro. The biggest problem was planning. It was haphazard. The repatriation was haphazard. There was no thought about people are going to arrive in the country and then what. I remember very well, fetching some of the comrades, who actually had to make some private arrangements because late arrangements because there was just no coordination from a logistics point of view. But the big issue is the political unpreparedness. That's one thing, and in the main, that actually resulted in a one man for himself type of situation where you're almost like dumped back home, and after you've signed your rough forms, and then you arrived, everybody's back and is happy, must just go home, and that was the big issue. No post-conflict cohesion sort of plan, to say how do you nurture the relationships that were there, forged in difficult times. So people were left on their own and effectively to compete against each other because at the end, a cohort of people will have the same capabilities. That's why the majority of us are concentrated around security-related issues, around diplomatic-related issues, and all those type of aspects, because that was the nature, of the political upbringing, so to speak, more concentrated on those aspects. But that lack of plan resulted in individualism. That individualism is destroying us all today. Unfortunately, lastly, you see that individualism being continued in the Veterans League. That's the only way you can explain the exclusionary nature of the Veterans League, where common sense tells you, even today for that matter, the majority of people who will have 40 years in the ANC will be more likely MK. That's just what it is. Now, which then means it's a natural home for an MK. But it's exclusionary again, people, creating kingdoms, of some sort, and then at the end, not moving forward. So that will actually be my direct answer there, is that we are where we are because of the poor planning, but then also our worst enemies as well, because we find that we have to compete with each other for the limited space we have, for the limited resources that are made available. As a result, we become so brutal and mean to each other because we see each other as the biggest threat, because we share quite a lot in common for the limited opportunities that exist. That would be my contribution on that. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yes, Commissar, I think Malik has covered me a little bit. And I would actually propose, I've been following this platform and participate and following it now and again, I must be honest. But I also have had opportunity to meet with some MK comrades who are not on this platform. And I've got an advantage of still being in exile. So comrades tend to brief me. I think what I wanted to say firstly, Buena Castro, I agree with you that there were no structures when we returned. However, just for the sake of our story, not history, but our story, it should be recorded that we went to a conference in Vembe. I think it was 1995 or thereabout. And there we actually had a structure. There were comrades, including Comrade JM, who were then directed to organize us. I just want to leave it there so that it should not come later that MVA was formed, but the Vembe conference, the first MK conference inside the country. And there the structures, and not only the structures, comrades, the welfare of the cadres, and not only the welfare of the cadres, there were also resources that were discussed there. I remember how Madiba got angry with us, but I would like you in your edition of your presentation to actually refer to the Vembe conference and the resolutions of the Vembe conference, because some of the challenges arise from after Vembe conference, and the opportunism and individualism that Malik is referring to is not something new. It actually came from there. And it's important to record this, because as we are now saying we don't have, or we find an uncomfortable home in the ANC, it has always been our home. And look at the likely individualism and opportunism in the structure of the Veterans League itself. And we find time to discuss why is it that even today, maybe some of you know, but I don't know, when is so-called Unity Conference that was supposed to be in December? And why has it been blocked? I've talked to some of the comrades, not blocked, but why has it not taken place? So that when we then look at what's to be done, we know the environment under which whatever is to be done is going to be done. And we also know by who. And we also focus on what do we as individuals also do in the meantime, so that we don't fall into that thing. I think it was Africa or Omri who was saying that we keep on waiting for orders, because there may not be a commander that will give those orders. So I just wanted to clarify that. But I would request, Comrade Commissar, if there could be a special just platform that we invite as many people as possible, and we just deviate from our usual program and just look at this question of what's to be done. What do we do? What do I do? And when we talk about this revival of the ANC is near collapse. We all have agreed. And we also know that the ANC is largely dependent on us, commanders and commissars, to the front. But we've got to then organize and talk to ourselves about how we get into that front and where is that front, and answer the question, the popular question of what's to be done or what should we do. Thanks, Comrade.
Yeah, you sort of summed it up in the sense that they're taking us towards a much more pragmatic than theoretical approach to the matter of money. I want to indulge the team to say time and space as an important element of answering the question what is to be done. May I suggest that tomorrow, I don't know what format. Actually, let me maybe echo what Sister Angie has said. The whole question of the 60th anniversary, coupled with the all-inclusive conference, is a purview of an elite that knows where it meets, how it meets, and how it defines our 60 years. and what we should do to reorganize ourselves. So essentially, the status quo is perpetuated in different circumstances. If the elite of MKMVA, that MK National SGSO, and so currently all inclusive conference is it for the elite that was nominated by the NWC of 10 people, or is it about the critical mass of MK? No answer to now. The second one is this 60th conference. I wrote a letter to Snooki because he's supposed to be the champion and president of the ANC Veteran League that we so much are getting married to because of constitutional considerations. But it is the appropriate vehicle as it operates now to take us to Canaan or the promised land. I have my own reservation. So we have to ask very pointed questions and not be abstract. Tomorrow is our 60th anniversary. What is to be done as from tomorrow? What is the voice we carry from tomorrow that qualitatively differs from the complaint of 60 years to what we ought to be doing to restore the dignity of MK and place it in the right place in the political and economic landscape of our country? Now, this change is raising a pragmatic question. Maybe the way to go is the 60th anniversary should be used as an opportunity for us to retrace the issue of where did we go wrong and what is to be done. Because there is illustrative landmarks that tell us that there were efforts to try and create a vehicle that would take MK to its rightful place in our society. And they all collapsed, and there's no explanation. They just died a natural death. People are living, but the ideas they had just were killed. So if we still continue that trajectory, surely we're still repeating the same mistakes. I think we're being implored by this discussion today to say, let's go beyond the narrative of what the history tells us, but to see what are the lessons from that history that must do things differently from tomorrow. My understanding is that when I got a letter, the response from the chairperson of the 60th anniversary committee, the answer was, don't ask me, ask the NEC and the SG's office. What am I being told here? I was saying, what's going on with these two milestones of our country, or MK? The Inclusive Conference, the 60th anniversary, tomorrow we're celebrating in Freedom Park. Who decided it should be Freedom Park? What are the logistics involved? Who participates in that event? Who doesn't? Inclusion and exclusion, etc., etc. I was told very clearly, I've got it, I'll share it. If a platform allows me tomorrow to say, the answer I got was, ask the SG, don't ask me. And it's the head of the 60th anniversary telling me in my face. And we have this dream, this utopia. The Veterans League is the all solution. No doubt, it's a potential. But in the current manner in which it functions, in which it's designed to be inclusive of MK, and all issues canvassed on age and everything, and service. Surely, if that's the case, it's not a vehicle that can take us to the idea of where MK should be. That's my personal view, because I've experienced it, because I felt nobody's raising these questions. And when we raise them, we get very weird and very strange answers. And to the extent that, therefore, I'm really leaning towards us taking this discussion that is generated by Castro to a level of saying, trace where do we go wrong and what is to be done from there. And it should be as robust and a manner perhaps that charts a new, qualitatively new path from how we did business. And I would like to leave it at that for now as a comment, reflecting on this change and the remarks that Congress have made. I'm opening for discussion. Omri?
Yes, just a comment. I wish to say that, I'm sorry to say so, but I'm not surprised by anything. I'm very sorry to say so. The ANC is captured. The ANC is captured and is paralyzed. Now we are expecting an organization that is captured, paralyzed, to lead us. So, and this is why it's There's no direction, there's no clear direction because the ANC is captured. I'm sorry to say it. And we did try in the past, of course, to go to the Tool House on several occasions to clarify the issues of ANC. And that's when we discovered that it is captured. And I'm saying to you, comrades, today that the ANC is captured. Until we can rescue it, there's very little you will achieve. There's very little you achieve. For now, I'll leave it here, and in future we'll discuss how we rescue the ANC. But it's captured. Thank you very much.
Yeah, the point is made. The question, that is, you're partly answering or saying what the problem is. The solution is what we ought to preoccupy ourselves 90% of our time. Where did we go wrong and what is to be done moving forward? As to how it manifests itself in the ANC being captured, should be the purview of that situational analysis that must be able to answer the question you are raising. The ANC was captured how, by who, for what reasons, and where is it, and how can you save it? These are integrated issues that can be managed from an integrated perspective. I'm allowing for other comments as we move up towards wrapping up. Any further comment? I'm not saying any.
Yes, Comrade Mosig. Yes, Comrade. Taking from Comrade Change's input, one, we should accept criticism and self-criticisms so that we'll be able to move forward. In the main, where did we go wrong? In the first conference of MKMVA, when KB took over as a chairperson, before the one of 2015 where he became a president, in the main, majority of us as the advanced detachment, we did not find it proper even to be within the branches of the African National Congress as membership, as per constitution. That is a fact that we must accept. The conference 2017 of Nazareth, where a consultative conference of that produced the National Council, was in the main provoked by statements which were made in our name by the then captured MKMBA in the form of leadership of Popoke. That's exactly where lies the problem. But I wanted to come to as a form of where to from now. In Mpumalanga, let me sketch this scenario. All four regions currently, in line with the revival of the Veterans League, in Sibande, we are on the ground. We are ready to launch at any time. 3 regions are ready, except in Kangala is falling behind. Comrade Makula has been tasked to identify and assist. I have been in constant contact with Comrade Uzigalala. He is endorsing the effort that we're making. But the current that must be underlined, the current leadership existing is also being captured, because as the ANC is captured, all these structures, which are key pillars of the movement, are manipulated in one way or the other. Now, I think a resolution that must also be taken, because it's very, very critical to note that Veterans League can be a solution, and other provinces are lagging behind in this campaign of reviving the Veterans League. We might also encounter some challenges. So we needed to resolve this structure to say, what is it, who are involved in Gauteng, who are involved in, because Eastern Cape, I think Eastern Cape is well organized. We needed to make a resolution around those issues, comrade. It's very, very critical. So the self-criticism to say this wound is mainly caused by ourselves. We must now lick our own wounds and take our correct position. And because you see, the history of the ANC says those comrades who were disgruntled, maybe rightly or wrongfully, but were in the very same situation where in the end we might be seen to be anti-ANC because the current leadership under Comrade Ramaphosa seem not to be able to heed or listen to the cries, or rather the issues that we are raising. I'm saying this matter because even the Stalwart 101 did call for a consultative conference. MK National Council called for a consultative conference. Nobody is listening. We are correct, therefore, Comrade Musi, to say where to run to, because in the preparation that we are trying to make now vis-a-vis the 60th anniversary, we don't have the leadership. The center does not hold. That is the challenge. Let me pause the leadership.
Yeah, I think we are now almost consenting about the fact that the 60th anniversary offers an opportunity to reimagine and revisit the way we do things by tracing where it began to go wrong, and secondly, having to navigate that journey to see what is to be done to correct it so that it never raises its head again, moving forward in the short, medium to long term. Because there's a legacy here and a heritage to be preserved, not only for us as we live, but for our children and future generations, not to lose the sacrifices that people made. So based on that, I'm really moving towards wanting to say we're almost wrapping up, and I've got a concrete proposal, if you do not mind, that maybe in line with our resonating theme, where did we go wrong and what is to be done to correct in a very fundamental way the checkered past and move towards a new future that's reimagined. That perhaps we get Usistenji, we get a few other comrades, we then have a discussion that begins to say, as part of the discussions in the 60th anniversary, because there's no content, except that we're going to Freedom Park tomorrow. After that, so what happens?
Boss, are you frozen, or are you thinking, or are you sleeping? I think he has a problem. Comrade Sisti, your hand is up. Let's take the hand.
No, I wanted to understand the proposal by Moss, because...
Oh, okay, yes. I do have an idea of what he was going to propose.
Okay, maybe you elaborate on it.
Yeah.
Because as this platform, I don't know what official position we hold to represent in any way or form the views of MK and take those views to wherever. I don't know what our credentials, or what your credentials, because I'm a guest, what your credentials are. And I know for a fact that there are other comrades who are also doing their own thing on this celebration. And thanks to both my age and my gender, my age, because then I'm in the oldest group of women. So I tend to be invited in these things. So when we do this thing ourselves, we should actually say, what is our political status in the African National Congress for us to go and talk on behalf of MK wherever in the African National Congress. And therefore, because I am not sure what our political or official status is, I'm finding it difficult to understand what Moss is saying. Now, Malik, you say you know what he's saying. Perhaps you can elaborate.
Yes, no, I know exactly where he is going. I think the basic idea here is that an MK celebration is a cause of celebration for every ex-MK member, whether in a group organized in an official formation or format by the ANC or by the state or by whoever, or simply sitting at home. You deserted me. I'm where you left me. So I would be where I am when the celebration actually takes place. But that does not mean that I have no right in my lounge to be happy, about this day and acknowledge it, as we've always done, for the last 60 years. Of course, those who have lived that long, So the idea, therefore, is to say maybe tomorrow we can have our own freestyle session, invite people who can actually just share other perspectives beyond ours. Of course, if there is any other engagement. Now we're talking about post the formal one, like in the normal slot, 6 o'clock, where everybody else is like literally back in their place and have a virtual celebration of sorts. So this is where Moss is going to say, maybe with the question you have asked, you might, you might be answering a question we had, behind the scenes, as to say, what do we do tomorrow? Today is supposed to be our last session for this year because people are going on holidays, but we've got excellent papers, some of them linked to some of the questions which were raised, that we thought maybe we can have them in January. But the question remained, what do we do tomorrow? And then we said, well, let's see if there is an official program. We'll observe that and submit ourselves to that program. We are not contesting that program because we are not in any position to do so. But after it is done, the official Freedom Park sessions and all things that are official ANC, official MK, whatever official MK is in this vacuum, we will then, as friends and comrades and ex-MK in our own right, be able to just have a virtual celebration and invite maybe different people who haven't actually even gone that far, because as you can see, the reason for that is that we were monitoring this. We spoke to Braslugi seeking to understand, and he was constrained in giving some information because we were clear. In fact, I was the one who made some of that contact together with Moss separately. That all we wanted to do is to make sure that we are seen as in support, not as in competition or in conflict. I am not sure if that actually helped in some way. So he's just not thinking about anything that could be linked to his old activities with Mhlongo in 1984 or whatever. No, there is no mutiny this time around. Definitely, So we're all aligned, so to speak, and maybe Ray can actually just add there, and then we can take it from there. I mean, both of them are like my wonderful comrades. I like to molest them a little bit, Hlongwa and Moss. Ray, do you want to comment on what Sister Tenji has said?
Yeah, I think, thanks, Commissar, and Sandy, thank you very much. I'm sorry I had a problem with my communication ends. For the better part, I was not around and I had to come back slightly late. Yeah, I think comrades, I'll start with the issue of Commander Ombre mentioning the issue of the ANC being captured and everything. But we must understand one thing, the people who played the key role is ourselves. People captured the ANC because we ourselves couldn't defend the ANC. That was the bottom line. The ANC was captured in our eyes because we ourselves, we always try to be very cautious. We're very much concerned about how do we look in the eyes of whoever is doing something wrong about the ANC.
Who removed you?
And as a result, what we find ourselves in, including the fact that MKMVA was stolen in front of us so easily, is the fact that we're too cautious. We're cautious for everything. What is going to be happening tomorrow about the celebration? We spoke about it months back, but we're so cautious. We're so scared that we didn't want to be seen to be interfering with Abu Prasnuki. We're so scared. We just wanted to be so cautious. Everything, we realized, we knew that tomorrow there's going to be a disaster. Nothing is going to happen. But we tried to be so cautious. And we're so cautious in a way that we're cautious to our detriment. If we check ourselves in this structure, in this NPO, anything that you call it, all of us were holding some leadership positions in MK. Just some few months back, I was a provincial chairperson of MK National Council in Gauteng. Comrade Motoman, we are in the NEC of National Council. Comrade Malik, you are leading the Johannesburg region. All of us, we had serious leadership positions in MK. But because we were scared, we were so cautious, we were trying by all means to be seen in a good light. That's why everything is done in our presence and we do nothing except complaining. A simple thing. When we are supposed to organize something for December 16th because we're realizing that nothing is going to happen, everybody said, no, we should not be seen to be going contrary to this. What has happened? We have since realized that there are almost more than 4 celebrations in the name of MK that are going to be happening tomorrow. Where are we? The people who try to be cautious and make sure that we ourselves, we don't stir the boat. We're on the side, we've lost everything. Now, to the people that we lead, to the people that are looking upon us for leadership, we become so useless and irrelevant. I'll take a practical example. Let's take Greater Johannesburg. Comrade Malik is our chairperson of National Council. Then MKMVA is there in Johannesburg, is continuing with the celebrations. What's happening about us in MK National Council, or people who used to be in MK National Council, were even afraid to even mention the name MK National Council because we believe the ANC is going to expel us. We're so scared. We're so scared totally. And people don't care. They do everything. They call celebrations. They use the name. They issue statements. But just the mention of who we used to be, we're so scared to do that. Now, as the way forward, I'm not sure. I hear the concept by Commissar Moss and everything. I think comrades, that will take us anywhere. The biggest problem that we have as members of MK is something that is going to happen next. The stealing of MK conference. We can talk, we can think, we can propagate, we can come with reasons what happened before, what needs to happen and all that. What is happening now is preparations for the stealing of the next MK conference. And should it happen, it doesn't matter how are we going to feel and what are we going to do and all that. The next coming 5 years is going to be the most painful one. I'll give you a practical example. With the conference of MKMVA in 2017, everybody was even scared of even going to next to Boksburg where the conference was held. We went there, we were 4 members who said we didn't want the conference to continue. We went there. The elections were supposed to be on Friday. MKMVA didn't vote for KB for the entire Friday, because the entire Friday we refused them to continue the elections because we told them that bona fide members of MK were not in that conference. But what had happened with the entire leadership that was there, and it was said to be opposed to KB, that disappeared and left the whole thing, and people stole that conference. Let's check what is happening now. We're talking about the way forward and the way this and that. But people already have slates of MK conference. They've already spoken. They've got deals between provinces and everything. We don't have anything. We're waiting for a date. If a date can be next week, we're giving a date next week. Here's a date next week. What are we going to do? There's nothing we're going to do. We'll be watching there. The conference will be stolen. Those who have been in MK for the past 10 years, I think you've seen. MK conferences have been stolen in front of us in our full view. And that is the biggest risk that we're facing now. Yes, tomorrow, it's our celebration, it's for our leaders, it's for our name and everything. But there's something catastrophic that is coming, the one of the conference. And if we're not cautious, and if we don't toughen up and make sure that if we say no, it becomes no, and we stop this thing of saying, we're worried about how is the leadership going to view us, we're not going to stop what is going to be happening. Therefore, my view is, as the very important step, let's galvanize members of MK, let's galvanize everybody to be just wary of the process that has already started of our conference being stolen. Therefore, if we can start there with MK, new MK, or new United MK being stolen, then I think we'll do a lot. Then that is a structure that we can use to go and start cleaning the ANC. A new MK is a structure that is needed now to clean the ANC. If you don't have MK, a unified MK that is progressive and aligned to what we expect, we must forget about what is going to happen about the ANC. Therefore, my take is, let's concentrate on protecting the new product that is going to come out of the MK conference. I understand we're always saying our conferences are not doing what we expect. We should concentrate on policies and all that. Now, comrades, you must understand power politics. You can come with your good politics and everything. If there's still leadership there, you're gone with your policies. Nobody's going to implement those policies of yours. They can be as progressive as you want. They are not going to be implemented. Therefore, it's important that we protect the next product that we envisage. Thank you very much. Malik.
Okay, thanks, Odi. Thanks for that. I mean, I think for Gauteng, we'll be able to find a solution around those. I mean, as you know, we have a plan on how we can be able to deal with some of those in-house issues. Madre, have you been sorted out?
No, I've actually been unsorted.
Okay.
I don't think that there's anything that I can do or address tomorrow because I'm in another engagement. But with the presentation that has just been made, because as I said earlier, I come from the Eastern Cape, and I can confirm that some of the comrades there, not comrades, some of the comrades there actually feel that the so-called Unity Conference is just going to be confirming a particular trend. I don't want to say a clique within ANC, within MK. So if at all we want to protect the new so-called United MK, we may do that as, was it Africa was speaking just now, that it's almost, I don't know where Gauteng is, but it's almost the deal is done. Because one of the things that you should have been looking at also is what is happening at the prep committee level and who's who and who's doing what in that prep committee. And who finally, I mean, from the various detachments, is going to come to that conference from the various provinces and detachments. And it sounded, and I know that this is gossip, it sounded like whoever we are on this platform. And he was talking about council. I was at the council conference. I don't know if council still exists, because some of the council members, the positions that they are taking are not what I thought we'd agreed at council when we were forming that council. So I don't know where the council is, but I have a feeling where former MK MVA is. That is, if I can name it, the people that are going with Kebby. I have a feeling that they have gone much ahead of whoever is supposed to be uniting with them from the council. And if we go, in my view, if we go to that conference thinking that now we're going to unite, I think we just have got to think again. Because what may emerge in that council, in that conference, in the name of all of us, is an affirmation of a particular tendency within, I don't want to call them a faction, within MK. And we would be forced, because democratic centralism, if people are elected, they are our leadership. And this is what has happened conference after conference of MMK, how the leadership emerged. And this is what has happened in our name, the things that have been happening, as Comrade was saying, that we're afraid. Many things have been happening in our name. But we are now going to a unity conference. Who unites with whom? And what emerges, are we going to then own whatever emerges? But unfortunately, for the proposal of tomorrow, I will log in if there's something to log in, but I will be in an engagement just to be clear. Thanks, Comrade Malik.
No, thanks, Assist. Thank you very much. I see Moss is still not back here. So, Ray, your hand is up. Sasanda Semfena, or is it a new one, a follow-up?
Comrade Malik, I'd also want to make a comment.
Okay, you go ahead.
Evening, comrades. For those that do not know me, my name is Eric. I'm from the West Rand. I think I would like to also concur with what Comrade Ray was saying in relation to the conference being stolen. I think I spoke to someone in confidence who happens to be a general, and I'm not going to be able to mention names in this meeting. But it was clear from what the general was saying that the conference is going to be handled in a military way, which then suggested to me that the conference is going to be stolen, because from where I was seated, I was actually asking the comrades to, you guys are in the National Executive Committee of MK Council, and we've never had any meeting convened by the NEC for so long. So what does it mean for us? Because as provinces, as Gauteng, we've been proactive, we've been, responding to media, reports and so on. But we've never had anybody from the NEC saying anything about us, particularly that as us as MK Council have always been in support of what the NEC of the ANC has been doing. So what's your response to that? And he just simply said, no, don't worry about the conference. The conference is going to be handled in a military way. So what I'm saying, comrades, is that it is true that the conference is going to be stolen. But, the travesty of this whole thing is that it is not going to be stolen by MKMVA. It is going to be stolen by those that are within us as MK Council. So whilst we're looking at those from MKMVA wanting to take the conference, it's actually not, to the contrary, it's not them that are taking the conference. It's us, people from ourselves that are intending on sidelining some of you comrades and taking the conference because they've got preferences. But also, comrades, I wanted to say that we've got two important conferences that are coming. We've got the ANC National Conference that is coming, and we've got the MK National Conference that is coming. And these two important conferences, particularly the MK Conference, is the one that's going to rescue the ANC. The ANC is in a crisis, but we can't depend on those that are in the ANC to save the ANC. We need to make it a point that we
defend the ANC as MK. And the only way to do that is by ensuring that those that are going to be elected in the NEC are going to be the right people. Otherwise, we're in trouble. I spoke to Comrade Ray the other day, and I was saying to Comrade Ray, if we leave the ANC in the hands of those people that are handling the ANC at the moment, I saw a list. We're going into regional conferences. We're going to the PEC. We're going to the provincial conference of the ANC, and we're also going to the national conference of the ANC. So that process, we can't leave it to chance. We also need to participate in meetings of the ANC so that we also, in a way, try and rescue the ANC from those meetings, because at the moment the ANC it's directionless from where I'm sitting. So I think I want to, agree with those comrades that are saying the conference is going to be stolen. And I spoke to somebody that's actually been handling the process, that's in the forefront of handling the process. And I know reliably that it's going to be stolen and it's going to be handled in a military way. Thank you, Comrade Mali.
Okay, thank you very much, Comrade Derek. I see a number of hands. I just want us to warn us on a few things. This is a public platform, so obviously there are very important issues we'd like to talk about. Some of those probably would like to talk about behind closed doors. There is no closed door here right now. So we should probably try and rein our passions back to what we want to talk about, and some of these other things we take them at dollar side. I do think so. And also, obviously, time has actually moved on quite fast right now. So I'm going to just do a quick. Now, Songo, you are normally to the point and brief. Let's see if we start with you. You're going to keep your track record on that.
Yes, there's just one item that I want to emphasize again. We need to think differently about the conference and elections. We need to think differently about conference and elections. From now on, we must separate them. When we talk of conference, we must not be talking about elections, And I noticed that the Congress continue with this conference, which of course is elective conference, and that's where all this confusion is. And that's why they've captured the leadership already somewhere, because it's this elective conference format story. Well, what I'm saying is, comrade, let's not repeat the same mistake 100 times. Elective conferences are captured through and through from 1990 Durban conference upwards up to now, they are captured. And so when we continue with this conference format that we're talking about, you are obviously continuing to be captured. You are obviously taking yourself to be hanged, somewhere. Now I'm saying, let's change. We don't need our conferences for elections. They should be separate. Elections should be independent of conferences. If we want to elect MK leadership or whatever, let's elect it separate from the conference. That unity conference, I want to say that unity conference, we must declare it null and void before it starts, because we don't need a conference for election. We don't need a conference to elect leaders. And that is the bottom line. That is the bottom line I want to emphasize. So that conference should be declared null and void before it starts. We don't recognize it. So even if they are, we say we don't recognize it. We want to elect everybody in MK should have the right to elect his next leader, everybody, not only those who are going to that conference. And this delegate staff, this delegate going to a conference, it's all crap, because it's captured. We don't want the delegates anymore. We want everybody to elect his own leader, everybody. I must be in a position to elect my leader from my bedroom here. I don't need to go to a Beachwood or whatever hotel they're going to. And this is the bottom line I'm saying so. So that conference, I would declare it null and void. On my side, I will declare it null and void. It doesn't represent me. Yeah. Thank you very much.
No, thank you for that energy. Look, there are certain realities though, Mshongo, but we can talk about those later. We are not the prep complaining for the conference here. So we don't have to remove each other's heads, but we are all on the same page. Like we are completely aligned on this. So we just need to be practical as well. Castro, your hand has been up for a while. I'm sure you want to be released now from being the presenter.
Yes, that is what I was raising my hand about that. Perhaps can we declare that the presentation is over?
Yes.
And that maybe what we are looking at is perhaps the program going forward regarding answering the questions that Comrade Sistenji was raising. And I saw Commissar Moss was also talking about tomorrow's program, which I think we haven't confirmed
any of those.
whether is it still going forward or not. He got frozen before he could complete his input on that. Perhaps maybe if we can get guidance about it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I think we can probably deal with that aspect behind the scenes and monitor the direction of the wind. Because it's this time now and we're almost all tired. We've been here for more than 3 hours. So that's probably. Ray, you did have your hand up and then it's withdrawn. I'm going to come back to you. Yes, Sisti? Go ahead.
No, Comrade Malik, I just wanted to say that probably as you summarize, I understand the passion and everything of Comrade Omri, but I would like to be part of a decision that says we declare a conference called by the African National Congress structure in whatever form, null and void, even before it is called, and even before we know what's going to happen. Much as we may have appreciation of what Comrade Omri is saying in terms of what should be done from now onwards. But at the moment, as far as I personally am concerned, we are still an ANC and we still stand and are guided by the ANC constitution and how it does things. So I just wanted that recorded because, as you were saying earlier, this is a public platform and I would find it very uncomfortable to be part of a decision to declare a conference that had been decided upon by the highest structure of the African National Congress, the NEC, and to declare it in advance null and void. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. No, definitely. That's the point I was trying to make. As well. We don't have the local standing for that. So we as disciplined members of the ANC, we will fight our own issues within the parameters, of the organization. We're not going to go against that. And I'm sure with all the passion, that's probably Mhlongo, I realize that you can't have 10, 12 people deciding, on behalf of everybody else. But we'll be able to go and influence and persuade whoever. And if we succeed, good. If we fail, well, there is life after that as well. But I'm quite keen for us to move to closing this meeting now. I still have another 3 hours of hard work, paid up work after this. So still a long period for some of us. Mhlongo, your hand is up. Is it an old one? Or is it a new one? Omri? Okay, it looks like it is. Yeah, no, it looks like it. It's an old hand, Mhlongo? Or is it?
Yes, it was an old hand. I don't want to respond to.
No, that's perfect. No. That is in order. Not that is in order. Is there anyone who can propose closure? I mean, we've got old people here. I can see my dearest comrade Motoman is like restless, and I think diabetes and high blood pressure and all these things, they are starting to show up now. So I don't want people fainting on the program. You're proposing closure?
I propose closure.
It's seconded by Ray.
Okay. I assume there is no violent opposition to that, and therefore we will declare this session for today closed. And thank you very much. If there is anything else, we will communicate it tomorrow, but celebrate, as much as we can within the limits we have. Thank you very much. Have a great evening. Amanda.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you. Comrade Malik.